I created like a list initially of like things I wanted to do for content. And I find it incredibly difficult to go back to that list and make up a video on the spot about it. I think it's so much easier when you're dealing with like the things that just happened. The way I try to think about it now is if I have like a client story or a situation that I want to pick up the phone and call Alan or Frank and talk to them about it, that might be a good video is what I've determined. So that's my trigger point. If it's like, this is something other people need to hear about, make a video and have other people hear about it.
Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSell here, president of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. And we have a full house today. We have three special guests, all of which I would consider friends of mine. And we've been working together professionally for, I think, the past few years or so. And the reason why I brought them on is oftentimes I have conversations with advisors about whether or not they should be including social media and various aspects of content creation within their business. And oftentimes these advisors have the same excitements, the same worries and reservations. And I've decided to bring them all on here to air all that stuff out. So you're going to hear about their thoughts in before they even started using social media, what did they think about it? What were some of the reservations that they had, how they worked through those, and then ultimately fast forward through finding out what results they're getting, what feedback they're getting from the folks that they're connected to, and the impact ultimately that's having on their business. So I'm going to go through, read some bios, properly introduce everyone. I will say that on our coaching calls, we tend to go off on tangents. So we're going to do our best today to stay organized, but absolutely no promises on that whatsoever. But first person I'd like to introduce is Aimee Butler. Aimee is a CFP and a partner at Merriman Wealth Management. Her practice focuses on busy professionals and families, really helping simplify their financial life and helping them work towards their goals, allowing her clients to spend time on the things that are important to them. Outside of work, you can find Aimee spending time shuttling her kids to their activities or dragging them out from underneath a dresser or a chest. If you followed her on social media, you'd know what I'm talking about. And she also loves volunteering in Eugene and practicing yoga as well. Next on the list, we have Frank McLaughlin. Frank is also a CFP and a chartered SRI counselor. He's been an advisor at Merriman for the past decade. His experience is in helping families transition into retirement by focusing on three main areas: maximizing income, minimizing taxes, and paying for healthcare costs outside of work. Frank can be found traveling with his wife and chasing after their golden retriever, who, again, if you were connected with them online, you would find that his golden retriever is adorable. And then finally, last but certainly not least, Alan Hensley is also a CFP and works at Merriman, and he has about a decade of experience in wealth management. He specializes in helping professionals and families simplify their finances and make smart choices with their money. When he's not building a financial plan for a client, he enjoys spending time in the outdoors with his wife and their two daughters. So with that, Aimee, Frank, Alan, we just spoke on the coaching call yesterday, but nice to see you guys again and welcome to the show.
Good to see you, David.
Thanks for having us, David.
Awesome. So like I said, we're going to do our best to kind of keep this organized. And when we first started working together, I would call it more kind of generalized coaching around business development and relationship building. And then over the last couple of years, we've refocused our group coaching specifically to focus on social media and how to leverage that for your business. And I feel like the journey has trended upwards in terms of effectiveness and results, not to say that there weren't any roadblocks along the way. So Alan, I'm going to kick it off with you. I'm going to put you on the spot. But when you think back to before the days of actually using social media for purposes of business development, relationship building, relevance, omnipresence, what was it that initially attracted you to consider bringing this into the fold?
What attracted me to it was just connecting with existing clients or prospective clients on the business side of things. That personal connection takes a long time, but social media just speeds all of that up. And I think, there's so many the bio that you mentioned, spending time with my family and the great outdoors, I get to share that. And that's not something that just comes up quickly with clients or prospective clients. But like I said, it just fast tracks it with social media.
Mm-hmm. Aimee, over to you. What was it outside of being in the group and me somewhat making you start to create some content? What was it that was intriguing about including it into your business?
Unlike Alan, I had a bunch of social media accounts already. So I was already spending time on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Instagram. And for me, it felt like a good opportunity to professionalize some of the things that I was already doing and then to kind of make a greater scope of the people who I already connect with. So it seemed like a real easy transition. It was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. But for me, I was excited to do it and just to use that part of my life that I already do in my business.
Yeah, if you can take something that you're already doing and impact some more people and bring on some more revenue, why not? And then finally, Frank, over to you. What were some of the excitements that you had in getting going with social media?
Yeah, thank you, David. So I was, I'll say, late to the party after Alan and Aimee had already started making these incredible videos with you. And the aspect that I really enjoyed about it was kind of at a similar time over the past 2.5 years where the world was shifting and still wanted the in-person feel, that personal connection with clients, potential clients, where we couldn't necessarily be in person, or now when people don't want to sit in traffic or necessarily come downtown for a meeting all the time, want that convenience of being at home, we can still get that connection where, they get to watch a video of me talking about a topic or see what, my family and I are out doing. So kind of finding the best of both worlds and, the times that we live in.
I think what a lot of you guys mentioned that I want to hit on is the fact that you're able to kind of share a little bit more about you as a person, your personality, the things that you're into. And what I really like about that is, and you've heard me say this before, which is social media does a great job at leaving clues. And, as an example, should someone choose a financial advisor based on the fact that, they do yoga and Aimee does yoga? Maybe there's more to it than that. But at the end of the day,
they absolutely should every time.
You're like, listen, we're going to relax together. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry.
Fine.
But what I will say is that it gives them another kind of excuse and a reason to like you, to spend time with you, because you have that common ground. And unless you're somewhat public with the things that you do outside of work, you don't give anyone the opportunity to connect with you on that personal front. And in terms of it leaving clues, you also get to know what they're up to and what's going on in their lives. Now, Aimee, over to you. As far as potentially reservations around utilizing social media for business development, what were some of the things that were going on in your mind as you started getting into it that perhaps you had to work through?
I think for me, the biggest reservation is when you are engaging in social media content on a platform that you're already on and you already have connections on, making that kind of shift between, me as Aimee, a person in the community, a friend, or, ex-colleague or whatever it is. And now I'm going to put, maybe not always, but to some extent, forward my business and what I do. And I think sometimes not wanting to feel pushy or not wanting to feel salesy, I really like to be the genuine person that I am. And for me, it felt initially like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to be somebody else, right? I'm going to have to put on this personal and this super professional face, which I have, but also I'm me. And I was a bit nervous about having to put on a face that just wasn't me and feel like I was living a little bit of a lie, which I'm grateful I have not had that problem, but it was a concern for sure.
So in that same vein, Aimee, in talking with advisors, I hear from them a similar sort of objection or reservation. It's like, hey, I've held myself out as this, type of persona for so long. I don't know how it would be received if I start speaking through sort of a professional lens and start talking about what I do. So help me understand, and I want to get a similar response or a similar perspective from you guys, Alan and Frank. But did people come out of the woodworks and be like, "Oh my God, Aimee, why are you all of a sudden talking about this?" Like, what was the reaction to the people who you were connected to when you started to speak professionally?
The vast majority of it was super positive, right? I mean, people are like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot that you do that." Or, "Oh, I never knew that you were a wealth advisor." Having connected with them over years, right? More than anything, it's been super positive, right? And in fact, actually, as we're sitting here, I don't know that I've ever had an actual negative interaction with anybody about it. It could be they're thinking it themselves, but we're not going to let that get in our heads, because there's plenty of people who have connected since then and said, "You know what? I'm glad that you posted that or that you had that conversation, because it made me think and remember that you're in this business." And, referrals and clients and things like that have come from it. So I have not had any negative experiences that I can think of right now.
Now, and I'm not looking for an exact percentage, but just kind of a gut check. That's not something that we necessarily track together. But you didn't go from posting all about your personal life to then exclusively posting all about your professional life, of course. So what sort of percentage would you say you post on a personal basis compared to a professional basis? And does that differ based on the platform that you're using?
Yeah, it definitely differs based on platform. So LinkedIn, for instance, is probably, 85% business with about 15% personal. And the personal is kind of weaved in here and there through my profile or through little pieces of conversation that I have in videos. Whereas Facebook, where that part was very much a personal platform before, and I do have two Facebook pages. I have one that is 100% business, and I have one that is probably about 25% business. So it definitely depends. It depends for me very much on the audience. I had a business Instagram. I found I wasn't using it really for business, and I put that back to my personal. So that's 100% personal at this point. But yeah, minus my couple clients who are still hanging out over there with me.
Love it. Alan, if I'm not mistaken, I think Aimee alluded to it during her bit, but if I'm not mistaken, you had LinkedIn, of course, and I think Facebook as well, but you didn't have Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. I could be misremembering that. But when you got into creating content, how was that received from the folks that you were connected to or clients that you connected with? What was kind of the vibe and the response in that?
Yeah, you're remembering that correctly. I started from scratch. So I just barely got LinkedIn when you and I met, and then I didn't have anything else. So social media, it was a little intimidating, and it was kind of daunting of I need to go from nothing to all of these great connections. And I feel like the learning curve can be steep at first. And, something I wish I'd learned a lot faster was, you don't have to be perfect. You're not going to go viral with your first post. Sure, there's always the potential for that, but you just need to get out of your own way. And, this is something that you and I talked about early on. Just create, just put something out there. And once I realized that, the content creation got a lot easier. I stopped trying to be a perfectionist. And the consistency is more important than having this super polished, like really perfect video or other content piece. And that took me, 6 months, a year to learn. And again, hopefully, that Aimee and Frank, they jumped on board with us a little bit later. And I think we were to share that with them. And if anyone's listening to this, just create and you'll learn as you go. And that's the beauty of social media, is that's totally fine.
Now, you mentioned learning curve outside of us working together, because I would argue that you've surpassed what my coaching can help with in terms of the way that you format your videos or your content in general. Like, there was a point in time where, almost like a relay race, I handed the baton over to you and you just went. And I've been thoroughly impressed with the editing that you've done. What resources have you latched onto to help with that learning curve? And quite frankly, your videos, they started off kind of like real and raw, and now it's intro, outro, text across the screen, things like that, where you're not outsourcing a lot of this, if any of this, and you're doing it yourself. Where'd you go to learn that skill set?
Well, first what I'll say is, depending on how involved you want to get, there's the spectrum. You can do everything from start to finish, the editing, the videography, all of that. It's doable. So I just want to say that it's totally doable. But also, to your point, you can go out and find someone, a third party, to help with the editing, all of that. So the path that I took, and again, I wish I learned this sooner rather than later, there's obviously a ton of content creators out there in the financial world, but also outside of it. Go find some content creators that you like and, look at that style, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can, in a lot of regards, not like word for word, but shot for shot or edit for edit, and just kind of look at what you like. And, I think that's the best way to create the content, is to try and mimic it in some regard. And again, that just sped up the learning curve in a lot of ways for me.
Yeah. And I would add to that Google, YouTube, TikTok, all these platforms that you're trying to, come up on, so to speak, you can learn from those same platforms, how to, and then insert what you're looking to do.
Yep.
Frank, I'm curious from your perspective. So there's been a number of advisors that I've worked with who have attempted to start this process, and along the way, they've become discouraged because of the fact that either it's their spouse or brother or sister or mom who are the only ones who, like the post, and perhaps they're not getting any tangible results from the videos or the infographics or blogs, that they're doing. And then they throw in the towel after a couple, 2-3 months, and they're like, this doesn't work. And there's a book that I've read that's called 3 Feet from Gold, which you can kind of deduce, what the premise of that book is. And I kind of relate that to those scenarios. So I'm curious to know, Frank, on your end, when you started actually pushing out content, what was the receptivity as it relates to the interaction on the post through likes and comments and sharing? Is that something that is important or not? Like, how do we know other people are seeing it? And then ultimately, when did you start to see your efforts pay off in the form of actual growth in your business?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, David. So I would say for me, it was kind of twofold, the way that I wanted to measure success with content. One being the things that you see, the likes, the comments, the reshares. I kind of think of that as being a social media celebrity. And then the other aspect was one that the public doesn't see, or getting feedback during client meetings like, hey, I saw your video on Social Security and I shared it with my friends. Or I told my friend to go to your LinkedIn page, go to your YouTube page. And so those were kind of the two areas that I wanted to see, being successful. And I would say early on, it was less of the social media celebrity aspect, maybe 5 likes, 10 likes on a post without reshares. But then I was getting feedback during conversations, because I also have my current clients on my social media pages who would give a comment here, wow, I loved your last video, or hey, your videos have been so great. I hope you don't get too big to work with me someday. And so I think kind of, having both of those avenues to measure success has been important to me. And then on the front of just sticking with it, I think as advisors, it's important to be doing some form or many forms of prospecting, looking to bring on new clients. And for me, selfishly, I would much rather shoot a video than type up a long blog post. For me, it's way quicker, way more efficient for me to hop on, film a video where I can show my personality, talk through things, instead of typing something out where personally I'm going to go through and double check, triple check for typos. And so in terms of all the different things that you can do, it kind of felt like the path of least resistance for me, and I enjoyed it. And that certainly helped me stick with it.
Awesome. Aimee, there's been instances when, we've chatted in our coaching sessions which as a side note, you guys are being very professional and polished in this podcast compared to our coaching session. So I commend you.
This is who we are.
We're on our best behavior, David.
I'm putting you guys on blast.
I wanted to hear what Frank had to say.
We know when to turn on the professionalism.
Oh man, I should have told you we weren't recording.
Is this the 20% personal versus the 80% professional on this?
I guess so. But I just had to put you guys on blast briefly. I'm like, wow, they're so like calm and professional, and I've never experienced this from them before.
Never.
But Aimee, there's been times throughout our coaching where you've jokingly said, although I believe there to be some truth behind it, where, let's say, things are busy, you're doing a lot of work with bringing prospects through the process and client reviews, all the conflicting demands that advisors have, right? And, we've talked about, all right, shoot a couple videos, between this session and our next session. And you would jokingly say, oh, I don't know if I can shoot a video because every time I shoot a video, I get a prospect out of it. So my question is, how long did that take to become that reality? Like, was it 6 months? Was it a year? Was it 3 months? And when someone reaches out to you, so how long did it take to get to that point? And when someone reaches out to you, what is that conversation like at that point in time? Like, how do they actually kind of prompt you as a result of shooting a video?
Yeah. Thanks for calling me out on that. That is absolutely true. I do say that a lot. But yeah, I think one of the things Alan said a minute ago, just to go back to it, was, he was talking about just creating something. And we talk about it as like, just get something out there, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and being top of mind is helpful. So yeah, at this point, quite often, right? And when I put something out there, I will get a pretty consistent somebody or somebody's, right, will respond back. And I think, how long did that take? I mean, it was probably a good 6 months, I would say, before it was any kind of consistency. And that had a heck of a lot to do with, and still does, with how consistent I am with what I'm doing. So if I've gone 2 weeks without doing anything, and then I post something, I might not get a response. But if I do, like Alan said, if we've got a couple of consistent posts coming up and I'm top of mind to people, it's more likely that I will get a hit on those particular videos or posts. Most often the response that I'm getting is, if it's on like a LinkedIn, it's something like, hey, we connected a while back, but, I've been watching your videos and I have some questions around financial planning. And, or, hey, I know we connected a while back, but I've been considering doing something, my family and I are now ready. Like, do you have time to talk? Sometimes it's more in depth, like, hey, these are all the things going on with me. What does your business do? And then I just take it as an opportunity to schedule a virtual coffee with people. So I'd send them my Zoom link for coffee, my Calendly, and just ask to meet, and use that as a quick opportunity to take it more, again, personally and off of LinkedIn and off of kind of the email back and forth train. And that tends to work pretty well. But yeah, it's so funny. It's almost to an actual post. And so that's the thing that, like Alan said, and I will reiterate for anybody who wants to know what to do, just do something. I was getting in my way just real quick because Alan's videos are so awesome that I was getting in my own way, wanting to emulate how cool his videos are. And they're fantastic. If you go find Alan Hensley over on YouTube, because he's pretty awesome.
Thanks, Aimee.
You're welcome. His are wonderful. I take a different approach. Mine are very much like, hey, I'm sitting in my car, my hair looks good today, and I have something to say. And so I do. And, they're more off the cuff and they're less edited. But I think the result is similar in that, you get a feel of who I am, just like Alan's videos get a feel of who he is, and Frank for him. So
now, with the people that reach out, okay, how often are those also the people that like and comment on your posts?
Virtually never.
Okay.
Never the same people.
So
never the same people. Always a one-off rando person that I'm like, hey, I don't know who you are. I haven't seen your name.
I just want to jump in real quick, David, because what you and Frank were talking about earlier in terms of those quote unquote tangible, the likes, the reshares, all that stuff. Again, when I first started in this, I'd spend 2 hours creating a video and I'd get, 2 likes or 10 views or something. It was super discouraging. But I think what's more important is the takeaways from clients or friends or family or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, great video. It's like, wait, you saw that? Like, how come you didn't hit that like button? It doesn't matter that they didn't hit the like button. It's getting out there. And what Aimee just said, staying top of mind is so important. Again, I wish someone would have told me this when I started. It doesn't matter on the likes or the views. It's the consistency in the content. It's getting seen. And, if someone's just scrolling past you on their Facebook page and your face pops up and they watch it for 10 seconds, like, to me, that's huge and that's impactful without having to see those statistics or the analytics or whatever.
And at some point, when their need for financial planning and their desire for financial planning converge and they decide they want to work with someone, you're leveraging the idea of recency bias because you're popping up on their newsfeed. And the other thing too is a lot of folks worry about, well, how often should I be posting? And, I don't want to do it too much. I don't want to annoy my clients. And I've shared this with you guys as well, which is, listen, if you were to text, call, or email a client every single day, multiple times a day, that's going to get pretty old pretty quick, probably, half a day in. But when they're going on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever platform we're talking about, they're going there to consume content, right? So they're either going to consume yours or they're going to consume someone else's. And what I like about everyone's content that's on this podcast is it's a nice mix between professional and educational, family and activity oriented, and some humor, right? So they get to see kind of all the different flavors of Alan, Aimee, and Frank. And it gives them plenty of opportunities to kind of latch on to something that they can relate to and just put you in a different category of professionals. But Alan, there was one instance where I jokingly said, I got to splice out this part of the recording and share it with people, where you were on a coaching call, and you had at the beginning of the meeting and then towards the end of the meeting, you had two people reach out to you during one of our coaching calls. I was like, wow, this couldn't have worked out any better. But then you also said, just based on kind of surface level stuff in checking them out, that, hey, I don't know, one of them or both of them, I forget, doesn't look like they would be qualified, right? Based on what you saw they did for work or whatever. So I think one of the unintended consequences of putting yourself out there is when you create an inbound business, not everyone is an ideal client. So my question is, when that happens, because inevitably it will, if you're really focused on social media, how do you handle that conversation to make sure that you're not putting your brand and your effort at risk by, not being nice to them and just kind of being dismissive?
Yeah. And I think just to take that question one layer deeper, social media, the content creation that we're doing is totally different than like a really targeted marketing plan with a funnel and like very specific demographics that you're going after. We're just putting content out there. And, my brand that I tried to create is leading with that education foot first. I'm super passionate about financial literacy and financial education. And if someone reaches out and they're quote unquote not a qualified prospective lead, I still want to help them. I still want to meet with them. I want to talk with them. I want to point them in the right direction. And, that goes from this digital branding to like in-person branding. Is I want to be that resource. And maybe at this point in their life, they're not the perfect fit to become a client now. Maybe in a few years they will be. Or because I have this social media presence, if they've got a friend or a family member, a parent or a grandparent that has these questions, and for whatever reason, the idea of financial planning comes up, hopefully, just like you were saying, that recency bias, I'm the first person that's going to pop in their head. So I've learned quickly not to get discouraged by meeting with someone that doesn't fit the perfect mold for a new client. It's just another opportunity to get my brand out there. And then if I have a good interaction with them, they're more likely to hit like and share and, put that out there. So I think it's a quote unquote, a good problem to have. And it's definitely something that it gets me fired up. I love talking with people. So, taking that kind of digital presence to a real world interaction, it's always a good thing.
And it's, how should I say, it's also cool for that. I'll pick on Frank for something that you said about like the celebrities, quote unquote, pseudo celebrity status where, and, we can laugh about it, but it's kind of true. When someone spends so much time seeing you on social media and then they finally get a chance to talk with you, even if they're not qualified, and you leave them better off having met you than having not met you, the things that they are going to say about you moving forward is going to help amplify and magnify the presence that you have online, because you're the same person online as you are in real life. Frank, one question that comes up fairly often is, hey, I'm down to do some videos. I'm down to do some other content. I don't know what topics to talk about. How do you figure out what the heck you're going to talk about when you go to shoot a video?
Yeah, I love this, David, because sometimes I will find myself thinking that, like, oh, this week I need to shoot another video or a couple videos for the next coming weeks. And then I'll spend too much time thinking about it. And then remember, just get back to the basics, really. And so what helps me come up with video ideas is just the questions and interactions that I have with my clients. So when they are asking me, what age takes Social Security? How do I sign up for Medicare? What's a withdrawal strategy? Just keeping a pen and paper nearby, write down those questions. And then if you have a minute, 2 minutes after the meeting, you could just shoot something right then. Say, here's this question I just answered. Here's the question. Here's how I answered it. Get rid of their names. But to me, that's felt like the most natural way to do it, just with the questions that I get through my normal client conversations, shooting videos on those, because if similar demographic, other retirees or whatever clientele you serve, they're going to be wondering the same thing. And it doesn't take any prep time because you just answered it, it's fresh. And so that always feels easiest for me. And then if you need kind of other options to explore, I would say you should also ask. So if you think of like your top clients that you love, top 10, top 20, I think it's perfectly fine, acceptable to ask them what sort of topics they would be interested in hearing about, what sort of questions they may have that their friends have. So that could be another avenue for easy videos to just have that checklist and run through it.
I just want to stress what Frank said. That was a game changer for me. Having a little notebook on my desk at all times, my little content idea book. Most of the time, the ideas come right after a client meeting, like you said. But also, I highly recommend if someone's thinking about getting into this, try to do it with at least another person at your firm or wherever you work. Having
Yes.
Aimee, having Frank, and you, David, to have us talk through these ideas. The inspiration just kind of comes through these conversations. And that's been, I think when we started, David, it was just you and me, and we were trying to figure stuff out. And it was cool, but having these guys with me has been huge. So try to get some cohorts involved if you can.
Yeah, I was going to say the number of times that I've been like, I need to do a video, and I'll like call Alan and be like, this is what happened today. And he'll say, no, that needs to be the video. And I'll be like, right, thanks for that. I created like a list initially of like things I wanted to do for content. And I find it incredibly difficult to go back to that list and make up a video on the spot about it. I think it's so much easier when you're dealing with like the things that just happened. The way I try to think about it now is if I have like a client story or a situation that I want to pick up the phone and call Alan or Frank and talk to them about it, that might be a good video is what I've determined. So that's my trigger point. If it's like, this is something other people need to hear about, make a video and have other people hear about it.
And you can capture it in your marketing folder filled with sticky notes or notebook. Oh, you got it right there. Now, Aimee, for you, I want to go back to something that we talked about towards the beginning of this episode, which is social media leaves clues, and it kind of allows you to be relatable and relate to some of the folks that you're connected with. So how do you use social media as it relates to relationship building? So I think that with the content that you post, it can be inspiring, it can be educational, it can be funny, right? But then there's also using social media to actually build relationships on kind of a one-to-one basis. So what have you done, be it on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever, where you've actually been able to kind of chit chat through the messaging feature or in the comment feature? Like, what does that look like? Because just posting, in my opinion, isn't enough.
Yeah, I try to be as intentional as possible when I'm on there, right? Because again, my norm is like you said, like you go on just to like see what's going on and check in with people. What I like to do is if I'm on and I see something, for instance, from a client or prospective client, somebody in the community that I want to connect with, I attempt to comment something to it. I actually had a client the other day who posted a little cartoon on Instagram, somebody about retirement. It was just a little funny cartoon about somebody getting to retirement, not having any money. And so, of course I posted on it and was like, hey, maybe they should find a financial planner first, And she was like, absolutely, Aimee. So I think, having the opportunity to like see what's happening on there. And then I think often I will do my best to remember what they did. And then when I see them in person, say something about it. So that particular client has a dog and a cat and all these really awesome animals that they have at their house. And when I have meetings with them, we talk about what I saw on there, hey, I heard Frankie got into some trouble. Like that little girl is terrible, whatever it might be. And that comes partially right from being intentional and paying attention to the things and the people that I want to connect with. And also I just have a really weird memory for that stuff. So that's lucky for me. But yeah, I think just noticing the little things that they do and interacting with them and just commenting, liking, sharing if it's something interesting, something they care about. Actually, something, David, that you did that I will call out on social media.
Uh-oh.
I know, right? The worst.
This could go in any direction. So I'm bracing myself.
I had a birthday charitable thing, right? So trying to raise some money for an organization that I was involved with for my birthday, I think it was last year. And I posted it on Facebook, a fundraiser as it were. And David was one of the people who put the money in and donated. And so when I see my clients or prospective clients on there, I do the same. So that actually was something I got from you. And I think that also just shows that you're paying attention and you care about things that people care about.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
I also appreciate the fact that you have way more ammunition on me than that. So I appreciate you keeping that close to the chest.
He got very nervous just then. Very nervous.
Well, I think it's cool too, because, whether you meet with your clients once a year, twice a year, quarterly, oftentimes like those are your only touch points. Whereas you guys find yourselves chatting with your clients all the time, even if it's through a like or a comment. And as we were just saying before about kind of the vanity metrics of likes and comments, like more people are seeing it, they're just not interacting with the post. So when they post something, there aren't a ton of people that are interacting with it either. So if you have something thoughtful to leave in the comment section, you're standing out because you're one of the only people or one of the few people that are actually taking the time to do so. So it helps kind of keep that relevance and makes them feel good. Now, with these videos, right, you can post them. And Alan, I'm going to toss it over to you before we start to wrap up. But with content videos, it's not just, hey, post them, move on and do another video, post it, move on. These videos can be used over and over and over again. And I think that one of the things that I really liked about your YouTube channel, specifically, Alan, that I've noticed is you've created some playlists that are like the 10 steps for this, the 5 steps for that. And you have kind of a summary video that's like, hey, if you want to spend 10 or 12 minutes watching this whole thing, have at it. If you'd rather break them up and, listen to and watch, a minute or two clips, you can do that. So I like the organization of that based on the topic. But my question is, how are you using these videos outside of just simply posting them on social media? Because once they're created and you can use them in other ways.
And that gets right to the heart of, again, something I wish I learned early on is you can reuse, you can recycle this content in different ways. And we talked a little bit about, all right, how much business, how much personal, but also the different social media that you're working with. YouTube, yeah, sure, make a 10-minute video, talk about something. That's great. Probably don't want to do that on Instagram or Facebook. You want to turn those into snippets, and a 10-minute video could turn into 10, 12 different posts on Facebook. So that was something that took me a while to learn. And it's been, I think, just knowing your audience is really, really helpful. And, obviously the difference between Instagram and LinkedIn should be pretty obvious. But also, going back to what I said earlier, if 10 people watches a video and you still think it's great content, post it again months or a year from now, and maybe it'll get 100 views. You just don't know who's going to be scrolling or what's going on in people's lives at that particular time. And of course, that's for more evergreen content. If you're talking about something super specific that's happening in the news, that's going to be a one and done. But yeah, the breaking up content and using it in all these different formats, you might spend an hour on a video, but you get to use it 10, 12 different ways. That's how you get the most bang for your buck. I do want to mention something what you and Aimee were just talking about, when you see something happening in a client's life, this is huge. What you said, David, you might meet with them twice a year. And in between meetings, you might learn this is a personal story. One of my clients, their beloved pet passed away. And so that turned into, I didn't put like a heartfelt message online, but I did send them some flowers, some condolence stuff. You can take stuff offline and make that connection and build that relationship so much stronger. So it's just, we're putting our lives out there, but the other benefit of connecting with our clients is we get to know what's happening kind of in real time. And that's huge.
Alan, real quick, I want to call out something so important there that, David, you mentioned earlier that sometimes it's getting that video in front of someone at the perfect time. Yeah. When a problem comes up or when, hey, now it's time to retire. And to Alan's point, maybe you posted something last year where, hey, at the time, it didn't really matter to them. You reposted or something similar this year, right at the right time when they're thinking about it. It didn't take you any extra time. And now, boom, the stars line up and they're going to reach out to Alan, to Aimee, whoever posted it then, even though it had been a year or 6 months and they'd posted it before, just that timing element. And that's where the consistency comes in as well.
And I wanted to jump into with something that everybody has said, but not been explicit about, which is that it is really, really helpful to specifically connect with your clients on these platforms. Like, we have not explicitly said that, but I think,
danced around it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And Frank, I know he said he was behind here, but that was the first thing he did, was jumped in and was like, I'm going to go find my clients, and worked through and did it. And, that is really, really important for this whole thing, to make sure that they're already on there. And as they come into your practice, go find them. They can always say no.
Yeah. Explicitly calling out and going beyond that, connecting with your centers of influence. So whether it's the traditional attorneys, accountants, or non-traditional, like a travel agent or something like that, people that and you're connected with, adding them as well. So then that one video that you make, instead of just one person seeing it, all of these different people that you're connected to will see it, and you'll be able to stay top of mind even without having an individual phone call with all of them.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Frank, too, because what I've learned is the attorneys and the CPAs and real estate professionals that I've connected with that are thinking about getting into social media, into content creation. All of a sudden, I look like an expert to them, and I'm by no means an expert, but I'm a little bit further ahead in the process, and collaborations and creating content with another professional. That's been a lot easier than just me trying to talk into a camera all by myself. And again, you're getting so much more exposure. You're getting all of a sudden in front of their network. So we've talked a lot about clients today, but definitely COIs is huge.
Yeah, they definitely have had several who are like, hey, I've been watching your videos and I'm trying to do it, so we have the conversation about what they should do and how I can share their stuff on my page too. So kind of the cross-pollination of groups of connections can be really awesome.
And it gives you an opportunity to add value, specifically in the looking through the lens of COIs, to add value to them outside of just sending referrals back and forth. Like, if you can be the guy or the gal who gets them over the hump, that helps them with social media and all the impact that it has on their business and their relationships moving forward, even though they were the ones actually doing the work, they're going to credit that seedling that was planted with you, who kind of got them over that hump. Now, we've talked about how social media can be used and content can be used to create something and have it seen by tens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people. And going back to what I was talking to Alan about, and feel free to, whoever wants to jump in, kind of like a pop quiz, see if you guys are doing this or not, which is, yes, you can recycle your content, right? And you can, if something, landed well, you can post it again. Or if you did some, videos around tax planning and deadlines and stuff like that, cool, you can post it next tax season. How can you use it on a one-to-one basis for the purposes of helping aid in a referral?
I'll just jump in because I've had clients, and this has saved me a ton of time, that reach out with like a specific question around like, wait, how much can I contribute to a 401k? Or what's this mega backdoor Roth thing? And I've got the video, I've got it in my back pocket, and I can send it to them like that. And I'm like, great, let's talk about it. But hey, here's this resource. Also, I know that your colleagues or, other people in your life have these questions. Just shoot this over to them. And, I've had a couple of videos that kind of took off because it's been top of mind. And people are like, whoa, this super complicated thing. wait, you have a video for that? Like, this is awesome. So when you make a super specific detailed video, that's something that, yeah, of course, hopefully passively it gets consumed, but you should be pushing it out there too. And there's a couple of videos that I have that, yeah, I sent probably dozens of times to prospective clients and existing clients. So yeah, evergreen stuff, don't be hesitant to get it out there yourself and be your own.
I've sent Alan's video to people. I don't have that one at all, but I have sent Alan's.
I love it. And what's cool about that too is when you think about what's needed for a client to introduce you to someone, that someone to then correspond with you over email or over the phone, to then go from that stage to actually coming in for a meeting or hopping on a Zoom call or something like that. Like there's a lot of steps in place, and it's more difficult to do than if a client knows that one of their friends is asking a question about a particular topic, they can just share the video. And it's way easier. It's way less of a commitment. And then what happens, and I'm sure all of you have noticed this too, but for everyone listening, when they come into the office and they meet with you, whether they have a lot of money, don't have a lot of money, young, old, male, female, regardless of their profession, they're similar to going to a doctor's office. There's some level of intimidation when you're meeting someone new in a professional environment. But if they've already been exposed to you, they get a sense of your voice, your tone, your mannerisms, your face. When they walk through the door and you look like the person on the video, there's a certain level of comfort as opposed to intimidation that helps aid in the relationship building process. And rest assured too, that they're not going to watch a video and then come into the office right away. They're probably going to go and watch another video of yours, another video of yours. So they're spending more time with you at scale. So ultimately, when they come into the office, you kind of have to royally mess up for them to not become a client, or they're unqualified, because the likability factor, the trust factor, by and large is already there. And now you just need to do a good job of solving whatever their problem is. So social media is kind of like a Swiss Army knife as well. So this was super helpful. Speaking of sharing one-to-one, I'm definitely sharing this episode with folks that are considering to enter into this space. And before we pivot to the next segment, I do want to give a special shout out to someone who was once in our group and has transitioned to another group. And she crushed it with videos, if I'm not mistaken, specifically within the tech space and the Amazon space, and has gotten a lot of great receptivity to it, which is Paige Lee. So Paige, if you're listening to this, we miss you in this group. Obviously, I still see you in the other one, but I just want to make sure that I give a little plug for you and some credit, because you did fantastic with the content game as well. And we miss you having you in our group. So feel free to come by at some point. And Aimee just put a little heart emoji on her Zoom screen. So you got that going for you too, Paige.
I'm back, Paige.
So this was super helpful. The last thing to go through, and I do this with all of our guests, and the whole purpose is, to get folks to share one of their favorite books is, or a book that had a big impact on them. And the purpose is really to distill a reading list and motivate people to read stuff outside of their, books that they study for licensing purposes. So with that being said, Alan, you had identified The Alchemist. What is it about that book that really kind of stuck out, and why do you think folks should check it out if they haven't?
Well, I think the theme of my conversation today is it's all about the journey. And, going on that journey, you're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to have twists and turns that you just don't expect. And, sometimes you might end up right where you started, but maybe that's where you're supposed to be. So I guess spoiler alert if you haven't read the book, but highly recommend it. And, I think the fact that going on this journey, like I said earlier, can seem intimidating and daunting, but it gets easier, and you just got to have fun with it. And if you don't get inside your own head, you're going to do really well.
Love it.
David, real quick, to double down on that, I did not know, disclaimer, that Alan would be saying that. And right behind me here, we have this. So I'm holding up The Alchemist for those who are just listening to it, but great pick,
Send
Alan.
it to me, Frank. Send it to me.
I'll sign it and then send it to Aimee.
I will say Frank chose not only does he have it behind him, but he chose The Alchemist as well. So we'll go over to your perspective on it, Frank, in a moment. I'll go to Aimee first so you can figure out if there's anything you can say different than what Alan just said or come up with a different book. But Aimee, you chose The E-Myth, which I've read as well, and I really loved it. But what was your take on it?
Yeah, I really like the E-Myth. It's an old one, but honestly, it just has stuck with me for so many years. It is very much about how, as an entrepreneur, you most often are a very good technician. You're very good at the day-to-day of what you do. And you may have an entrepreneurial moment where you want to go run a business for yourself and you go into it. So for advisors who are in business for themselves, this would be an awesome book. But that you have to be able to be three things. You need to be a technician and you need to be a manager of your business and you need to be the entrepreneur and the visionary. And if you can't be those things, you need to find those things in the business that you're working in. And yeah, it was just an awesome book that I read years ago and it just absolutely sticks with me. But now I have to read The Alchemist because apparently I'm the odd woman out here.
I swear, Frank and I did not
possible.
talk.
Do you know how many books there are?
They're like, let's team up on Aimee and we'll pick the same one.
Do you know how many books there are in the world? This is insane.
That's so cool.
That's funny.
You guys are weird.
So Frank, would you like to double down on The Alchemist or mention another book that I don't have on my end to be able to properly tee up? You can take this however you want since Alan stole your thunder.
Yeah, I promise this was not a paid sponsorship to talk about The Alchemist from the publishing company or the author. But another classic I'll toss in there, just top of mind, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I think that really applies to today because if you're thinking about why you want to get into social media, staying top of mind for your clients, for your COIs, hopefully reaching somebody else, showing a bit of your personality, and just delivering some great education. If you just kind of have that and then just start shooting just based on that, and then the how you're going to do it, what sort of computer programs, all of that can come later. Just knowing why it's important, why you want to do it, and then just start getting that content, I feel applies very much to our conversation today.
Love it. Well, I appreciate all those recommendations. With that being said, if I'm an advisor and I'm listening to this podcast and I say to myself, okay, in theory, this sounds good. I would love to see what it actually looks like. What social platforms would you like them to connect with you on? Frank, I'll start with you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Awesome. And is it just Googling Frank McLaughlin, or is there any special, URL or anything like that?
Yeah, for both of them, it's Frank McLaughlin CFP. So
Cool.
you put that in LinkedIn or Facebook, that'll go to my pages.
Awesome. Aimee, how about you?
I would say probably same LinkedIn and Facebook. Also Aimee Butler CFP, but you got to spell Aimee the right way. So it's AIMEE. 1 T, not 2. It's weird.
Awesome. And then Alan, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. We've even got a Twitter. You type in Alan Hensley, but you got, just like Aimee, you got to spell it the right way. ALAN Hensley. You'll find me.
Love it. I don't know if you just said it or not. I may have missed it, but also on YouTube to be able to see that branding and whatnot, because that's impressive. So
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Be the fourth like for all of their posts, please. And shameless plug, I'm most active on Instagram. It's just at David_DeSalle. You can find me on the other platforms as well, but most active on Instagram. But Alan, Aimee, Frank, it was a pleasure. And I think we're all meeting next week for our quarterly reviews as well. So we just got lots of time with each other these next couple of weeks. So I appreciate you guys joining, doing me a favor and appearing on the podcast. And we got a great piece of collateral to share out. So I appreciate your time and we'll chat next week.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Awesome.